Since the pandemic, we've been all working remotely, and that's led to a shift for a lot of us business owners going from face-to-face meetings, face-to-face work, face-to-face communication to communicating online like this, doing Zoom calls, team calls, or whatever you call it. But the issue is that a lot of us have no experience with that, have no background on that, and it makes a lot of us come up awkward, make a lot of mistakes communicating online. So today we'll be talking about that and a lot more with our guest, Mike Lane Evans. So this is the Tech Your Business podcast where we break down technology, inform you about the latest in technology to help your business learn more, earn more, and do more. My name is Peter, and like I said, our guest today is Mike Lane Evans. So welcome to the show, Mike.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so can you just tell us a bit about yourself and your journey?
Yeah, so I started life, I guess, as an actor. So I started as an actor when I was 8 years old, and I stopped when I was in my early 30s. And I did it for most of my life. It was everything that I knew. And then in 2016, I found myself going into lots of meetings and failing. I was practicing, I was preparing, and then I was going in and hitting what felt like a ceiling for me. It felt like I could only give 60% of myself. And as soon as I left the room, 100% came back. And I was, this is not helpful. And it happened again and again and again for like a year and a half. And at the time, I was working as a consultant in communication, and I built lots of tools and practices to help improve what was happening for me. And when I did, I did a load of research, and there was a study done here in the UK. I'm based here in London, and in this study, they found 83% of people reported feeling something like I had felt. This like this breakdown in what you're intending to do and what you actually do. And then in 2020, when COVID hit and everybody moved online, my business became even bigger than ever before. As a communication coach, there was more need than we'd seen because so many people, like you just said, Peter, are on Zoom. They know how to be an engineer, they know how to be a developer or a mechanic, and now suddenly they have to talk to people on Zoom. And actually, as an actor, you learn that there's a big difference between standing on stage, standing in front of someone in a small room, and being on camera. Similarly, if you're on podcasts, it's different again for the audio. And so we've spent a lot of time helping businesses to better align what they want to do with what they're actually doing.
All right, so you talked about going on meetings and being 60% there and 100% out of the meeting. So what sort of mistakes were you making?
So in my experience, I haven't done a scientific study on this. However, when people are doing a presentation of some sort, whether it's a pitch to an investor, whether it's a presentation for a new client on Zoom or in person, what I see is that people will go one of two different ways. Either the nerves make you kind of hyperactive and talk faster, and maybe you say things, and it's that out of body experience where you're not quite sure what you just said. Or we get this thing where it feels like you can't be your full self. You can't let out all your energy. You can't be who you really are. And you don't know why that's happening. And even though I'm an extrovert, and most people would think, oh, well, if Mike's an extrovert, he probably goes hyperactive. Sometimes, yes. But actually, when I was really nervous, when it was that new massive client, I became this ceiling instead. And so what that felt like, what that looks like for me, my voice would kind of become a bit more trapped in my throat. My energy felt like I maybe was tired at the end of the day, even if it wasn't the end of the day. I felt very lacking in confidence. even though I've been working as an actor for years, suddenly I didn't know where to look, and my body I felt uncomfortable in my own skin. And all of this are really common factors for people suffering with a lack of confidence, a lack of self-awareness, and those two things together causing that breakdown. Similarly, if you're on the hyperactive side of things, again, it's actually a manifestation of that lack of confidence or those nerves. The unfortunate side effect of that is that you can come across as arrogant or overly confident. And I if any of your watchers, listeners are listening right now, feeling like people always say they're arrogant and they don't know why, this might be part of that. And so I think it's always really important to just have the opportunity to practice with somebody else to get. So that's why we built a coaching company. Able to give feedback. We're also able to help people wherever they are, whatever those sort of communication issues, and then scale them up from that point.
Interesting. So, so you talked about most businesses coming on Zoom. Like you said,
Yeah.
developers, everybody now we have to all be on Zoom. We talked about that. But why is communicating effectively in your viewpoints? Why is communicating effectively important to business owners, to business leaders?
Well, I think like as babies, we learn to communicate to get everything that we need. You know, even from like cries before you can speak, you need food, you need water, you need shelter. Those basic human needs, we have to be able to communicate them. And if we scale that up to business, your basic needs as a business are to make revenue, to make money so that you can survive. And if you can't communicate to potential clients what it is that you do, what the value is of working with you, whether it's your product or your service, if you can't communicate those things, then your business can't survive, it can't succeed, it certainly can't grow. You know, there's the stat, isn't there, that within the first 12 months of a new startup, a new business, 80% fail and shut down. And that, I mean, there are millions of podcasts and interviews out that use that stat, but it's still true. Years later, when they first came out, it's still those kind of percentages now. And it's because often, in my experience anyway, I've worked with over 1,000 startups, and those that are struggling to grow are struggling to be able to communicate.
Mm. Mm. You know, earlier when you talked about your struggles and being an extrovert, I was actually it really doesn't rhyme because most times you feel it's introverts who would have those challenges communicating online. Like for instance, I'm an introvert. I always tell people that before 2022, I didn't have any videos online because I didn't want to. I didn't want to come in front of the camera. I barely even used to take. I still don't take photos of myself. So it's that bad. I remember back then, before at the office, my team members always joke around and say that I would rather text them when they're in the same office than talk to them because I just didn't want to talk to anybody. So that's how bad it was. But I think with practice, so now you're saying as an extrovert, you had those same issues that would be natural for an introvert to have. And you said you built a coaching business where they're able to practice and all that. So when you're practicing with these your clients, you're practicing with trying to get them better at communications, what things do you look out for? What mistakes do you see them make? What things do you try to correct to make them present themselves at their best?
That's a great question. So one of the things that we can look out for in the early stages when we're first just getting to know somebody is their skill in asking questions and listening. And it's basic communication. So I'm sure some people are watching this, listening to this, thinking, well, that's obvious. One of the major courses that we run is in investor negotiation or client negotiation. And a huge part of that is how to ask questions and how to listen. Because actually we see a lot of people not being able to do it effectively. So an example I can give you, you're going on to a client call and it's this huge new client and it would really change things for your business, not just because it would be lots of revenue, but also in 6 months' time when you can talk about how, wow, we're working with these people, it will bring in a lot more clients.
Yeah.
And I think most businesses at some point have that moment. They have that moment now, and it might be you have that moment, and then 6 months later, you have an even bigger moment. And so we can continue to have them. What happens in those moments for a lot of people is you go in with an agenda, you go in with an end goal, and you're trying to lead the other person towards your end goal. So your end goal is almost certainly to get them to say yes, if it's a sales call. If you don't listen to the answers to your questions throughout it, you might really hinder your chances or mess up your chances of getting them to the end goal that you actually have. Because, so for instance, if I go onto the call and I want to sell 20 days worth of training, but I go on, and one of the things that comes up really early on is how budgets have been split by 50%. So since we first met in email, between now and the call, we've just had this huge budget cut at the company. We've actually had to do redundancies. We've had to let people go. If I just say, okay, so 20 days worth of training, I think is what's important, because I'm not listening, because actually maybe we don't need 20 days anymore because now there's 50% of the workforce.
Yeah.
But there's also less budget. And so it's not realistic to start trying to make people push for those things. And so instead, being curious and really listening to those answers is so important. It allows you to evolve, and most importantly, it allows you to connect with that other human being in a better way. And when we look at any research that's done on trust and our own personal experiences at Forefront Coaching of what's needed for trust, you need to be able to make those connections with people one-on-one. And a part of that, and this we know this from a study by a guy called David Mayer, we know that one of the major factors that's needed for trust is intimacy, or vulnerability. And so if you're not allowing yourself to just be there on the call, and instead you're just trying to fire those questions and get them to that end goal, then you're almost certainly going to fail. And then the other thing is curiosity. You need to, similarly with that intimacy, it's, can you show your real self? Can you also be curious to find out real things about them? So that's something that we look out for a lot. And it can really, I do free 20-minute discovery calls, me and my team do, with anybody that wants to explore our services. By the end, I only need 20 minutes to know what services or what kind of training days or one-to-one sessions we would recommend, because as coaches, we're asking questions and looking for those behaviors.
Yeah. Okay, so I think going from what you said, listening so you can connect better, as well as being curious about the person at the other end of the call. And I think that's one thing I think I'm still learning, because when I actually started this podcast, I realized that I suck totally at listening. Because most times I realize I'm listening to someone giving an answer, and then after like the first two sentences, my brain just goes off. So that's one. So once you said that, I just realized, oh yes, that's a really big problem, because it's something I have to force myself to remind myself that I have to be present. So for other people who have this same issue, and for me to a large extent too, how can you be a better listener?
So, I mean, on a Zoom call, the first thing to do, and Peter saw me do this just before we hit record, is get rid of your phone. That's the first thing that you can do, because honestly, we've had some building work done in our house recently, some construction work,
Yeah.
and it finished last week, but there's a few small issues. And just before Peter hit record, he said, "I'm ready to record," and my builder started to message me. So I quickly replied to the builder to say when I will be finished, and then I got rid of the phone because I know he's going to keep sending me messages. And even if he doesn't really need me to reply to them right now, that's 10, 15, 20% of my attention that will be on the phone. So the first thing is get rid of the phone. And I'm not saying don't have a phone. Oh, I've just I've got a standing desk and I've just hit the button on it. I just raised up. Yeah, I'm not. It's not when I've had this realization with phones about 5 times in my life. So I'm 38 now, and the first time I had this realization about how much my phone was not helping me to connect was when I was 17. And so when I was 17, I just got rid of my mobile phone. I decided I didn't need one anymore. Of course, it's unrealistic. Certainly, when you move into business, it's unrealistic for nearly everybody. So I'm not saying do that. Just put it out of sight, out of reach for a moment. If you're on a really important call, we all have to work from home. What conditions can you create to make sure there aren't any distractions? So, for instance, my builder is going to arrive in the middle of this podcast. I've already checked with my wife that it's okay that she answers the door. Zoom has amazing sound cancelling technology now, so no one's going to hear that, and I don't need to go and answer the door. But my question to your listeners, your watchers right now, obviously it's rhetorical because they can't
Yeah.
answer. Have you ever answered the door in the middle of a meeting? And if the answer is yes, then the next question is, why have you done that? And maybe another follow-on question is, what would that tell you if you were on the receiving end of that? And what I was so religious about this for a really, really long time, even with my team internally, I would not answer the door for a parcel if it arrived and I missed it and I had to wait another week for it. That's fine, because if I was in the office, then I would miss the parcel.
Yeah.
So I realized that working from home, when so my office for the business is here in the house. When I'm in here, it's like I'm not here. It's like I'm not in the house. I'm at work. So that's step number one. That was a big thing about just phones. But equally, closing on your computer, Slack, WhatsApp, minimizing emails, because as soon as those things start to pop up, again, there's 5% of our attention, there's 10%. And so then uh, all of those things are maybe obvious for some people. So once you've got all of the tech out of the way, then what else can you do to be more present? I think presence is something that you need to practice. Sorry, not you, Peter, just needs to practice outside of calls as well. It's just taking that time to sit without technology and to just think about one topic rather than being distracted by lots and lots of topics. So some people like meditation, some people like to just leave the house or leave the office and go for a walk. Some people, I know lots of men who do this, disappear to the bathroom to just sit on the like every man that I know that has a child hides in the bathroom for 10 or 15 minutes and tells their wife, I was working, I was replying to. But the thing is, it's not something to hide from. Actually, it's something I think to embrace. Wherever for you that moment of quiet is, to just be present with your own thoughts, build that into your day. And if you're lucky enough to be able to have 30 minutes of that every day, great. If it's 10 minutes twice a week, so only 20 minutes in a week, that's better than not having it, right? So that builds your like presence. Is just like riding a bike or learning to drive a car. You just got to build the habit of it, and then you can be more there. And then the treats or the tips along the way, I would say, are repeat back the words that they're saying. So for instance, if Peter asks me a big question, and actually it becomes sort of two questions, I've got the choice. Do I answer the first one, the second one? Maybe I can't remember the first one. So what I can do is use my I have a notebook in front of me and I just write down a word. So the word that summarizes what that question was. And it allows me to just kind of respond to those things. Or if I'm like, oh, I've got a great idea, I want to tell Peter that story, I write down one word to remind myself of that story. But then maybe a minute later, when the question is finished, I need to respond to this last part. I can then also maybe bring it back to that. So writing it down is a very quick way. You can just repeat that word in your head. So for instance, if it's I don't know, Peter has said about any books that you like to read that have helped with this, and then he moves on and talks about something else. I maybe just say book, book, book a couple of times, and it helps me stay on that. But it is really, really important to first of all respond to the last thing that somebody said. That is coaching, actually. So when we're trained as coaches, we are trained to respond to the final thing that somebody has said. Don't try to hold on to the question that you wanted to ask, but instead respond to what came at the end. So this is good for anybody when you're getting to know somebody in business, whether it's a customer or an investor. It's a good skill to practice.
Okay, so I think those are some tips that I think I practiced some of them already. So you talked about responding to the last thing. Although I get in trouble when when I do that with with some people. You know, they say ask men a lot of questions and they only respond to the last part of
Yeah.
it. So then he talked about writing down reminders, and I have a notepad actually in front of me because I don't really remember much. So once you say things, I just take some points down, so it's easier for me to have the whole gist, and I don't miss everything you talked about. Then you talked about having some moments of quiet to practice being present. Yeah, I'll do that because I don't do that. I don't do that yet. Then he talks about having the tabs and other programs closed on your PC. I've not done that yet. I'll take note of that. I'll take note of that because actually notifications are really, really distracting. Like they come up and you just forget what you were doing. You're trying to say what is important. And sometimes not even, it's just maybe the weather or something. Well, they talked about making your environment free of distractions. And I think what I do for that is I work from home too, but I've made it clear to everybody that knows me, not many people anyway, I don't really know many people, but to the few people that know me, that from 9 to 5 o'clock, at work. So you can find me. I'm not going to, if you call me, I might not pick the phone. If you come to my house, you would not see me till after that. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Then the first thing you talked about, the getting rid of the phone. Yes, I'll try that.
I feel like you were just looking at the phone right there.
The phone was looking really sadly at me.
So I I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, I got a new phone case with one of those ring pulls on the
Oh
back.
yeah.
And I actually got it because my phone's quite big, and if I'm walking down the streets in London, it's a little bit safer to just have the finger
Yes.
in. But one of the nice things about it is you can then use it as a small stand
Mm.
on your desk. However, it's a problem when I'm on calls because it's now even easier to see because I don't have to do this anymore. It's at an angle, so I can just see it. And actually, I realized that that was making me even less present on
Mm.
like my internal calls. We all work with somebody that tells a long story, and maybe you understood the point after the first 30 seconds. I'm sure I've already done one of those long stories on this. But if you then think, oh, I can multitask here, and you start to go into the phone, you'll miss something. And it could
Yeah.
be that you miss a key point, or it may be that you miss a key, like body language thing, a non-verbal thing, because it might be that actually one of your team members is really uncomfortable to tell you this, but you don't realize that they were uncomfortable because you didn't see their body language because you were looking down at the phone. So there are a lot of other key factors. And listen, just to be clear, I'm not perfect at all of this all the time. Why I can share many stories of failure in this. It's just habits to start trying to build and work
Yeah.
towards.
That's really good. So, with the clients you've worked with, can you share maybe a success story or two of business owners who have transformed their online presence, transformed their business, gotten really good results just because they were able to communicate better, present better, and connect better online?
Yeah. Okay. So I worked with a company recently who, I mean, most companies are using AI. So I was about to say who are using AI, but that maybe is a given. What they're doing is helping call centers. So let's say you are American calling a call center that is based in Malaysia.
Mhm.
And maybe there's a little bit of everyone's speaking English, but there's a difficulty in understanding accents or the intonation, the emphasis that's put on certain words. So for a while, there have been some AI tools to help the American to understand the Malaysian more. But what there hasn't been as a tool is the other way around. So if you work at a call center, you have someone with a very thick, say, Texan accent,
Yeah.
and there's no tool to help them. So this company have built a tool to help both ways. Now, because it's in its early days, its basic format, it's just neutralizing everybody's voice. So what's happening is, at first, this company, you're just getting basically a white British male's voice, pretty much.
Yeah.
A lot of the learning from the AI about what is a good voice, and if anyone's listening to this and not speaking to it, I'm saying good in inverted commas. What we understand to be good, or what AI understands to be good, is just done off bias. Because for a long time in business, white men have been, in those more sort of managerial positions. And so we all know, I think, that AI has a bias that we're working out. If you put that bias into conversation, then you're not actually helping those two people to connect in any way. And so, whilst the technology was really, really exciting and could really help improve communication across the world, actually, it's a very difficult thing if you're forgetting that a huge important part of communication is personality, tone of voice, non-verbal communication that comes into it. And so non-verbal, yes, we have our body language, our eye contact, but energy, the energy with which you speak is a part of a non-verbal communication. And so if you've now just got this neutralized voice that doesn't take into account culture or race or gender or type of business or introvert versus extrovert, or whether this person is tired today, you don't take into account all of that stuff and you can't hear it, then you can really mess up your communication. So that's an example of a company that is struggling because of not considering those things. On the flip side, I worked with a company who, when we first met, the CEO is a professional speaker. So they get paid $10,000 for a 20-minute, on stage thing, and they were coming to me to help with public speaking. And so it seemed like, why would they need my help and support when they're already doing really, really well? And we worked on some storytelling models. So for those who are not familiar, there's a theory out there that there are only 7 ways to tell a story. So whether it's if you're doing it successfully, then your way of telling a story will fall into one of these 7 ways. And so we had looked through some of these, helped develop them, and we created a presentation using one of these storytelling models. And 2 weeks after the presentation on stage, this CEO was at a conference and they learnt that one of the companies they really want to work with was going to be at this conference. So what they did was a little bit of research on this client, and they used the storytelling model we worked on together. Instead of exactly the same story we used, they used the model, but made it about this company. And they ran into, again, I'm using inverted commas because they sort of knew where this company would
Yeah.
be, and they approached them. And it wasn't even a full networking event. It was just they sort of approached them and they started to talk. And they very naturally told a story, which was a story about them.
Mm.
And this whole thing was less than 60 seconds, lots of preparation that went into it. And beyond the preparation, she was very, very natural because she practiced so much. She got her 10,000 hours in to be a professional in doing that. So it didn't seem like a presentation. It seemed like a conversation, but it was very well practiced and rehearsed. Now, this was something that she did beyond the work that we had done together. And she emailed me the very next day to say, I did this. And after 60 seconds with them, they said, you need to come out to Hong Kong to our head office. So this was in America, in the US. I think it was in the West Coast. And they said, you need to come to Hong Kong and present to the seniors on the board. Because she had used, like, continued to grow and evolve from her already very good communication skills, had become even better, and was able to use those skills to really land a perfect client.
That's really a good example. Both of them actually. Both of them actually. So there's another thing I want to touch because a lot of businesses have to do webinars, webinars, basically workshops online and all that, virtual meetings. But one thing I've noticed with these virtual meetings is that a lot of them are boring because you go on and you just have one person droning on and going through slides till the end. And a lot of times I probably just turn my camera off and go somewhere. Go somewhere else. So what would you say that business leaders and co can do to make these virtual meetings, webinars and co more engaging, more so they don't have me turn off my camera and leaving the room?
Ask questions. Not to repeat myself from previously,
Yeah.
it is the best tool, really. That it's the most simple tool, shall I say. So we can use tech. So when COVID first hit, people start on Zoom, you can do polls, you can do breakout rooms to drive that engagement. Some people, and the whiteboard as well, the virtual whiteboard. So you allowing other people to start writing onto the whiteboard. You may be watching this, listening to this, thinking, yeah, Mike, I've tried all of those and they worked for a few months, but then people get bored of those ones as well. So I think there's a couple of things. So my wife is an agile product lead. So she works in a big tech organization and is very agile. And if you look up, if you Google agile ways of working, Scrum Master, like ways to engage your team, there's actually huge resources out there of people, like forums of people saying, I tried this and it worked really well. And just, lists and lists of ideas of ways to engage. So for instance, something that I know has worked really, really well are small pop quizzes. So maybe we've got a 30-minute meeting today, but yesterday I let you know, as it's Friday, we're going to do a small pop quiz. Now I know that I have 5 developers in my team and 4 of them are really excited about Marvel films. So I put together a small pop quiz, 15 questions about Marvel. Now, the level of engagement that you get from people that really kind of geek out on Marvel, and I say geek out in a really positive way, it's because when you geek out on something, there's a real passion, there's a real involvement, a real connection to want to be a part of that. So now You've grabbed my attention. You've kept me engaged for the first 5 or 10 minutes. You've got me excited. You've lifted my energy levels away from it's Friday and I'm supposed to be quitting coffee and I feel horrible to, oh, I love that Marvel movie. Now you're more awake, you're more engaged, and so now when we get into talking about the business stuff that we have to talk about, you've sort of brought that engagement. So quizzes, things like that are a really great way. Ask questions, just making sure that you actually want to connect with people. I had a call this morning with a new client or a new potential client, and I always like to make some small talk at the beginning for me, it's not fake small talk. I want to get to know this person. And this client, this prospective client, after about 70 seconds, stopped the getting to know each other and moved into the business talk. Now, in this case, I think it will be positive. I think we will. He said that we want to work together. That not getting to know each other, especially internally with your team, how was your day? How was your weekend? Those sorts of questions that will affect engagement as well. So really obvious things of asking questions, even when you're really busy, take the 3 minutes to do it. That's honestly my biggest tip.
It's, I think I'm getting a lot of tips from this interview, I think. So I can already see a lot of people getting a lot of value from this. So let's talk about technology. What's your favorite piece of technology that you use within your business that you can't live without, or that you feel has made the biggest impact on your business?
Now, I I think it's sort of two things. Actually, it's three things. I'll tell you about them all really quickly. So, any small businesses who are just starting out, who don't have a CRM system, I will tell you a brief story about me. I've told you already, I was an actor. I've come
Yeah.
from a creative background. My brain is a creative brain, and putting data together and filling in sort of, the initial setup of a CRM system is just boring, in my opinion. I honestly can't explain how valuable it is as a tool. So we use HubSpot. There are other CRM tools that we've played around with. We just like the team functionality of HubSpot. But we are still only just starting to use the automation side of things and the marketing side of things. And already it's it's not just helping better engagement, it's helping more like continual connection, it's helping save time, which is saving money. And so it's a tool. If anyone who doesn't use one, who looks into them now, will see how expensive they seem. If you've never used one before, to go from here to there, it will just seem incredibly expensive. And so my advice would be, don't jump into the full package. Start dipping your toes in the water. Try out like one user or one user on this package and another user on this package, and start trying them out to see what works for you, because that's what we did, and it's been really, really helpful. Second tool is Fathom. So when we spend a lot of time on Zoom, I think a lot of people will have seen note takers by now, AI note takers, and there are a couple of companies out there that you pay a subscription for, and you get the written notes. Fathom, they do have a premium subscription, but they have a free subscription, which doesn't just take the transcript, but it takes the video, and you can move through the video and it will move down the transcript or vice versa. And we use it with our clients. Everyone has to agree to it. We're in the UK, so GDPR reasons, it has to be agreed to.
Yeah.
So I can't just use it for my personal use. 95% of the time, I'm not ever watching these transcripts back. They're there for my client, actually. They're a tool that my clients just repeatedly say has helped them a lot. When I send them a transcript of our call and they want to develop their story before the next session, they maybe haven't got time to look at their story for 3, 4, 5 days after our call. So 2 days before, or sometimes an hour before the call, they're trying to write down their story before we come to the next session. And being able to look at the transcript really helps with that. And it's free to start. And then the third thing is something that's brand new for us. We're developing our own learning management system or LMS tool. And it's going to not only allow our existing clients to get wider access to more resources, it's also going to mean that we as a company will be able to sell our first ever online course. So rather than just having to come for one-on-one sessions, which is too expensive for some people, we want to be more accessible. And so it will be cheaper. There'll be 20-minute sessions rather than an hour. You're not with the coach or watching videos. So of course it's a different level of value. And so therefore it can be cheaper and more accessible for people. And so it's really important to us that we keep communication accessible to everybody. So that's a really exciting new step for us at Forefront Coaching.
So you talked about your LMS, that's a learning management system, to be able to offer courses, make your services more accessible to more people than the Fathom note taker and the CRM. So for the people listening, you have some new ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for looking back over your career, you've talked about starting out as an actor and then up to this point. If you meet your younger self just starting out on communications coaching, what advice would you give your younger self?
So I think the story that I told when I was an actor in 2016, I've had similar smaller experiences like that as I've been a coach, because there are always times where you get the opportunity to meet with somebody that is wow. Maybe it's that huge. I never thought I was going to get the opportunity to sell to this company.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just somebody that you really revere, that you really like, that wants to become a potential like influencer for the company or something like that. And it's very, very easy to not be yourself in those situations. So I think my biggest piece of advice is don't ever not prepare. So the positive of that is always prepare. Because, and now this can be in different ways. So you can do a load of research, you can have some questions written down before you go into it. Sometimes maybe you haven't got time for any of that, and it's taking 3 seconds to take 3 big breaths. Taking an in-breath through your nose and out through your mouth 3 times has been scientifically proven to slow down our heart rate, reduce our cortisol or our stress levels, and allow us to be more present. And you can do more than 3. You don't have to stop breathing at 3. At the minimum, if you do 3, there is a biological impact on you. And in my opinion, people will disagree with this. I think it's better to be 30 seconds late to a call than to show up on time and not be mentally ready for it. Because the last thing I'll say about this is there was a study conducted over the last few years, and the findings came out last April about first impressions. And they found that in first meetings, first impressions, people will remember 3 things. It's the first 15 seconds of that meeting, the last 15 seconds of that meeting, and then a wow moment, a surprise moment, something where you didn't realize that you both loved rice, and oh my God, we both love rice. It might be that. It might be that you learned something new about this person's resume or CV, and you think, wow, okay, I really want to work with them now. Can be lots of things. But the first 15 seconds and the last 15 seconds, I see so many people messing that up. And they arrive at the call saying, hello, yeah, just how's things? That's the first 15-second impression that you give. So I think it's better to get your head in the space and turn up 30 seconds late.
So always prepare and make sure the first 15 seconds, the last 15 seconds are amazing. So for
Yeah.
listeners who want to, or watchers who want, I always forget we're on video, who want to learn more from you, who want to get more tips that we haven't covered, or who are interested maybe in working with you on improving their communications or anything, what's the best way they can reach you?
So our website is forefront-coaching.com. So FORE front, and then it's just a dash. So forefront-coaching.com. There's a contact section on the website. So the reason I direct people there first is there's a list of all of the courses that we do, the different ways that people can interact with us. So you can take a look at that, and then the online contact form says, what are you interested in? So there's an opportunity for you to kind of figure that out first, and then come to us saying, I need help in these areas. Also, I'm on LinkedIn. So we have Forefront Coaching professional page on LinkedIn, or I am Mike Lane Evans. I got married last year and became Lane Evans. And as far as I know, I'm the only Mike Lane Evans in the world, which is great because Mike Evans is a really popular name. There's like an NFL star and an ex-actor. So yeah, Mike Lane Evans on LinkedIn. You'll be able to find me easily. And please get in touch anytime, any help. And what I would say is I'm not great on social media. My growing team are brilliant, and over the coming months, there's going to be a lot of content out there that we want to give away, little videos, there's going to be a lot more blogs, newsletters. So please look out for those things. If you can't afford to even do the online course, there is content that you can access for free. So please come find it.
All right. So for anyone who wants to connect with Mike, that's forefront-coaching.com. It's going to be on the screen when we are talking about this. Then connect on LinkedIn too. He's the only Mike Lane Evans. Like I always say, I'm the only Peter Panico on LinkedIn. Or the Forefront coaching page on LinkedIn. So everything is going to be in the show notes. It's going to be on the screen to make it easy for you to connect with Mike. So thank you so much, Mike, for coming on the Take Your Business podcasts.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
So for the listeners, for the watchers, did you get any value from this? If you did, please share it with anyone who you know is having challenges with communication, with connecting better with their audience, with their prospects, and doing better online for their business. And if you want to be the first person to know when we post more helpful content like this for your business, don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you're seeing or hearing us on. So we have almost 100 episodes, and we release a new episode every week. So till next week, when we're out with a brand new episode, you have roughly 100 to listen to every day. So that's like 2, 3 a day or more. So bye for now.